Alrighty, y'all. Welcome back to the show. We're looking at why European trucks have up to 770 horsepower and U.S. don't. That's the exact title of this. So, yeah, basically why Euro trucks have more power from the factory and American trucks typically don't. Now, of course, there's always exceptions. There's custom trucks from both regions that can have more power than this, but we're talking strictly factory numbers here. My guess, before we even watch this, for the American one, the excuse would probably be long distance and they want fuel mileage. Of course, this can be said for Europe too. I know you can do long haul trucking in Europe as well, but that would just be my guess, is that whatever the American source is going to say long distance and fuel mileage. That's why they don't want as much power. I will also say horsepower doesn't really matter in these trucks. Torque does. So we'll have to see the figures on that. Anywho, this is a Discord suggestion from Steph Stunned Pilot, and this video, of course, is from the channel called Go Truck Yourself. Whoa. That's literally what it's called. I'm not kidding. There it is. So yes, before you start cussing back at me, I'm just saying the name of the channel. All right, jokes aside, let's start this video. So be linked in the description down below. Make sure to check them out. Alrighty, here we go.
Have you ever wondered why trucks in the US seem to have smaller engines that are less powerful than the ones in Europe?
Initially, yes.
After all, most things do seem to be bigger in the US than in most places in the world.
So right away, let me just interrupt real quick. Yes, when I first started learning about these trucks around the world, especially in Europe, I was shocked to see how much more powerful some of them were. Because that is what I'm fed here in America, that everything is bigger. Sorry, there was like a little gnat. That was really annoying. Everything is bigger here. Everything's more powerful. That's like the stereotype here. It's not always true, of course, but I'm just saying that's the culture here, is we tend to think everything is bigger and better here. And clearly that isn't the case, especially with trucks. Like I said, that was super shocking when I heard how much more powerful some of these Scanias and Volvos are, and other trucks. It's pretty impressive.
Right? So how is it that engines end up being smaller? While the engines in the US seem to have 605 horsepower capacity and 2,050 pound-feet of torque as their maximum,
That's a lot of
European
torque.
engines have 750 and 770 HP engines with up to 3,700 pound-feet of torque. Wondering why that is?
Wow.
Well, there are several reasons why the engines in Europe are somewhat larger than the ones you find in the US. Despite the trucks in America being much larger in size than their European counterparts. Could it just be the whim of the manufacturers in each region, or are there external factors such as landscape or the weight of the goods being hauled?
Yes.
Well, let's dive in and find out why European trucks have way more powerful engines than American ones. Before we begin, let's make it clear that trucks don't even need that much horsepower. It's mainly the amount of torque that an engine can generate that helps the truck haul all that load for thousands of miles.
Yes, that's correct.
As long as the engine's crankshaft keeps churning, more torque will be produced, more force will be applied, and the truck will be able to perform more work. Mind you though, the value of torque is measured in Newton meters in Europe and in pound-feet in the United States.
Yes.
Another factor you might want to look at,
and look, not starting any fights here. I'm very open-minded. You know this by now, but let me just say, one of the only conversions that really I'm not good at, and is just, I'll just quite frankly say it, it's annoying to me, is I know all the metric and stuff. I try and learn, and it's pretty easy, and I don't mind that at all. It definitely makes sense. One of the only measurements in these videos on different countries that I don't like is the Newton meters one. I'm so used to our horsepower numbers, which obviously is more universal, but then of course more specifically pound-feet or foot-pounds of torque. I'm used to that. And that's like the only way for some reason I can think of torque. I'm just being honest.
That is the landscape of geographical
just throwing
features
it out
of
there,
the US and Europe. It might not surprise you to learn that the roads in Europe and the US differ quite a lot. However, it will come as a surprise that the US terrain has a lot of flat surfaces. Of course, there are many hills and mountains in the United States, but the wide and smooth roads along interstate highways are flat and easy to maneuver, as truckers haul their loads across the country. This doesn't go to say that their terrains are better than Europe, but it definitely does make driving easier. On the contrary, roads across most of Europe can be more challenging. Many roads in Europe branch out into smaller roads. Others are hilly and have very sharp inclines, which means you'll have to change gears and speeds quite often when driving.
Yeah, that's a good point right away is geography differences, right? Now, of course, America does have tons of hills and mountains and stuff, but the way the system is here, most roads and most interstates, and I shouldn't say just regular roads. Roads can be crazy and hilly and mountain roads and all that. I mean, just the actual big interstates that, truckers going to be on 98% of the time. They were built in a way to where they're pretty smooth. You get some elevation changes that you can avoid sometimes, but for the most part, they're pretty straight and they're pretty smooth. Whereas I have seen maps of Europe. I've seen, some road views, street views of Europe in various different places, and it is intense. Lots of twisty turns. You're not going to find these big, huge, straight roads for hours and hours. It's just not going to happen there from the looks of it, right? Lots of elevation change, lots of twisties, and makes for an awesome driving road, but it also makes for more of a challenge and different needs when it comes to trucking, clearly.
These sharp changes in elevation within just a few hundred meters can also be one of the reasons why European manufacturers produce engines with more torque and more horsepower capacity than those that we come across in the US. Yet another defining factor for the engine power difference could be the difference in weight being hauled in the US and Europe. In the United States, there appears to be little need for a powerful engine because not only are the roads flat, but the federal weight limit that a single truck can carry in the United States caps at 80 tons.
Oh, 80 tons. I thought it was 80,000 pounds. I've always heard it's 80,000 pounds. Granted, I'm not a professional truck driver at all. I'm just a fan of vehicles, and I know a tiny bit about trucking, and I thought it was 80,000 pounds.
So you can't have more than that set limit goods on your truck at once. And believe it or not, an engine with 2,500 Newton meters of torque can handle that quite easily with absolutely no strain or compromise in its performance.
Right.
On the contrary, the maximum weight limit varies within the EU. While there isn't one set number, it can be anywhere from 60 to 90 to 104 tons, depending on the type of truck or the axles it might have. So for weights above 80 tons, you need an engine with a higher torque than 2,500 Newton meters.
So you're going to have to weigh in on the comments on this one if those weight restrictions are, semi-accurate. I don't think the U.S. one was, unless I'm remembering it wrong. I'm pretty sure it's 80,000 pounds, not 80 tons. But therefore, I don't know if the EU numbers are correct either that were referenced here. But
the torque needed for American
I know that usually in Europe you can haul more in most places than you can in the U.S.
trucks. Couple this with the hilly roads of Europe and it becomes a tad bit more apparent why the engines in Europe are more powerful than those in the US.
Right.
As such, the major manufacturers of engines in the US trucking market include Mack, Detroit Cummings, and PACCAR. And the strongest
Cummings. Whoa, I am like so sketched out by a lot of
engines in the US trucking market include Mack, Detroit Cummings.
Now, I am not trying to bash this video at all, but that I don't even know what that is. I've never heard of that. I've heard of Cummins that also has a different logo. What is Cummins? I'm pretty sure he meant to say Cummins because the other ones were right. Detroit, Cummins,
and PACCAR.
Packer.
And the strongest engine you'd find in the U.S. right now is the Detroit DD15, a 14.8-liter engine that has the capacity to generate 1,550 to 1,750 pound-feet of torque and 400 to 505 horsepower. That being said, you'd find that many, if not most, of the engines in the US are 12 to 15-liter engines that generate 400 to 550 horsepower. In contrast, the European engine manufacturers, which include Mercedes, MAN, DKF, Renault, Volvo, IWrocker, and perhaps more popularly known, Scania, have been known to make more powerful engines with horsepower ranging between 440 and 640 HP, with the most powerful ones being produced by Volvo and Scania.
Right.
The Volvo D16K, which is known as the world's strongest 6-liter engine, produces 750 horsepower and 3,550 Newton meters worth of torque, while the Scania V8, which is even bigger and more powerful than the Volvo D16K, has a 770 horsepower capacity and 3,700 Newtons meters worth of torque. That being said, it's interesting to note that some of these American and European manufacturers actually work together. For example, Volvo, Mack, and Scania share their engine parts and information concerning
What?
Turning technology with one another.
I thought Volvo and Scania was like a fierce rivalry.
So you could say that while these engines may differ in power, they might not be that different after all when it comes to how they've been built. With that, it's clear that there are several factors leading up to the engines in Europe being more powerful. In fact, the more you look into it, the more justified it seems that European engines are stronger than American ones. And until the weight restrictions of the landscape of the US changes,
Right.
which is highly unlikely, this will probably stay this way.
Yeah, that's interesting. So that's going to be the end of that one. Some interesting info, some shaky info as well. I kind of corrected, I think, if you want to confirm that correction and or insert other corrections or concerns in the comments, please do so. But yeah, I mean, the general consensus is yes, the European trucks by factory standards, they do have more power. And I do think it makes sense. Right, you do have some more intense terrain and the way the roads are built. You have a lot more variation in roads, some small, some big, lots of curvy roads, not lots of gradient changes. So I think that makes perfect sense. He didn't mention the fuel mileage, so I could be wrong on that. I think it does play a part. I just think that, and I don't even know if the American trucks get better mileage, by the way. I'm just saying that that's what I think the American truck companies or whatever that source would be, I think that would be their excuse is they're going for mileage. I feel like I've heard that before. Obviously not the whole story, so I don't know if that's totally correct, but that's just one of my guesses. But yeah, the point is it's fun to learn about all these, and I like them all. I think it's fun to have variation. That's what makes the world go round. We're not all the same. That would be boring if we were all the same, right? So I like the American trucks. I like the engines, I like the manufacturers, and I equally have been totally fascinated with and totally like the European manufacturers. I think some of the MAN, the DAF or DAF trucks are absolutely awesome. Mercedes looks some sweet looking units. And of course, you have the powerhouses like Volvo, which we do have here in the States, but is slightly different too. Our Volvo trucks are different than a lot of the Volvo trucks I see in Europe in these videos. And then, of course, the big player, Scania, right? Totally awesome. Who the hell wouldn't love a Scania? They're freaking beasts. Anyway, I can't wait to hear your comments on this one down below. And like I said, I think in Europe it's cool. You guys can haul a lot more weight. I know that fact is for sure correct. As for how much, I'm not really sure. I've heard on other videos, so I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know it's usually more than the U.S. That being said, y'all, please throw a like on there if you enjoyed this. Subscribe to be part of this amazing community. Keep your awesome suggestions coming. My name is Ian. You're watching IWrocker, and until next time, y'all, catch you later.